In the heart of the vibrant and bustling village of Kijiji, there lived a young girl named Amani. Amani was known for her kindness and bravery. She had big, curious eyes that sparkled like the stars in the night sky, and she always wore a smile that could light up even the darkest of days. Kijiji was a peaceful place, surrounded by lush green forest and flowing rivers. The villagers lived happily under the rule of King Jabari, a strong but fair ruler who cared deeply for his people. But there was one problem that disturbed the peace: the evil sorcerer, Nzuri. Nzuri was once a wise and respected elder, but he had turned to dark magic, seeking more power than he could handle. He lived in a dark cave on the edge of the forest, casting spells and spreading fear among the villagers. One day, Nzuri decided he wanted to be king. He cast a powerful spell that made King Jabari very sick. The king's illness worried everyone, but no one could figure out how to cure him. The village healer, Mama Moyo, tried all her herbs and potions, but nothing worked. Amani, being brave and curious, decided she would help. She went to Mama Moyo and asked, "What can I do to save King Jabari?" Mama Moyo looked at her with sad eyes and said, "Only a pure heart can break the spell. You must find the heart of the forest, a magical flower that grows deep in the woods. It's the only thing that can save the king." Without hesitation, Amani set off on her journey. She packed a small bag with some food, water, and a little wooden carving her father had given her for luck. She waved goodbye to her family and friends, promising to return soon. The forest was dense and mysterious. Amani walked for hours, listening to the sounds of birds and rustling leaves. Suddenly, she heard a soft crying sound. She followed it and found a tiny, injured antelope lying on the ground. Its leg was caught in a trap. Amani gently freed the antelope and bandaged its leg with a strip of cloth from her dress. The antelope looked at her with grateful eyes and said, "Thank you, kind girl. I am Rafiki, the guardian of the forest. Because you helped me, I will help you find the heart of the forest." Amani was amazed. She had never met a talking animal before. Rafiki led her through the forest, showing her hidden paths and secret shortcuts. They crossed rivers and climbed hills until they reached a beautiful clearing. In the middle of the clearing stood a single, glowing flower, the heart of the forest. Amani carefully picked the flower, thanking Rafiki for his help. "Now, I must hurry back to the village and save King Jabari," she said, but just as she was about to leave, Nzuri appeared. His eyes were dark and filled with anger. "You cannot take that flower," he hissed. "The king must die, and I will be the new ruler of Kijiji." Amani stood her ground, holding the flower tightly. "I will not let you hurt the king or my village," she said bravely. Nzuri raised his hand to cast a spell, but Rafiki leaped forward, blocking his path. "Go, Amani!" Rafiki shouted. "Save the king!" With Rafiki buying her some time, Amani ran as fast as she could back to the village. She burst into the king's hut, where Mama Moyo was waiting. Amani handed her the magical flower, and Mama Moyo quickly brewed a potion for the king. King Jabari drank the potion, and almost immediately, he began to feel better. The color returned to his cheeks, and he smiled at Amani. "Thank you, brave Amani," he said. "You have saved me and our village." But Amani knew the danger was not over yet. Nzuri would not give up easily. She looked at the king and said, "We need to stop Nzuri once and for all." King Jabari, now feeling much stronger, stood up and nodded at Amani. "You are right, brave Amani. We must stop Nzuri and bring peace back to our village." Mama Moyo handed Amani a small, glowing stone. "This is the stone of truth," she explained. "It will protect you from Nzuri's dark magic. Use it wisely." Amani took the stone and placed it in her bag. With King Jabari by her side, she felt more confident than ever. Together, They gathered the bravest warriors of the village and prepared to confront Nzuri. The villagers marched through the forest, led by Amani and King Jabari. Rafiki, the guardian antelope, joined them, guiding them to Nzuri's dark cave. As they approached, the sky grew darker, and an eerie silence fell over the forest. Nzuri was waiting for them at the entrance of his cave. His eyes glowed with anger, and he raised his staff, ready to cast a powerful spell. "You cannot defeat me," he shouted. "I am the most powerful sorcerer in all of Kijiji." But Amani stepped forward, holding the stone of truth high above her head. The stone glowed brightly, casting a warm light that pushed back the darkness. "Your evil deeds end today, Nzuri," she declared. "We will not let you harm our village any longer." Nzuri laughed, a cold, cruel sound that sent shivers down Amani's spine. He began to chant a dark spell, but the stone of truth shone even brighter, surrounding Amani and her friends with a protective shield. King Jabari raised his sword, rallying the warriors. "For Kijiji," he cried, and they charged at Nzuri. But the sorcerer summoned dark creatures from the shadows to fight back. A fierce battle ensued. Amani, protected by the stone of truth, focused on keeping Nzuri's dark magic at bay. Rafiki used his speed and agility to outmaneuver the shadow creatures, while the warriors fought bravely alongside King Jabari. Amid the chaos, Amani noticed a large, glowing crystal deep inside Nzuri's cave. She realized it was the source of his dark power. She knew she had to destroy it. With the stone of truth in one hand and determination in her heart, Amani dashed past the fighting, heading straight for the crystal. Nzuri saw her and shouted, "No! Stop her!" But it was too late. Amani reached the crystal and, with all her strength, smashed the stone of truth against it. There was a blinding flash of light, and the crystal shattered into 1,000 pieces. Nzuri let out a terrible scream as his dark magic was destroyed. The shadow creatures vanished, and the darkness lifted from the forest. The sorcerer fell to his knees, defeated and powerless. The villagers cheered as the light returned to the forest. King Jabari approached Amani, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You have done it, Amani. You have saved us all." Amani smiled, feeling a warm sense of pride. "We did it together," she said, looking at her friends and the villagers who had fought bravely by her side. With Nzuri's power broken and peace restored, the villagers returned to Kijiji, where they celebrated their victory with a grand feast. King Jabari thanked Amani in front of everyone, declaring her a true hero of the village. Amani knew that life in Kijiji would never be the same. She had proven that even the smallest and youngest among them could make a difference. And from that day on, the villagers lived in peace, always remembering the bravery of the girl who had saved the king. The grand feast in Kijiji lasted well into the night, with music, dancing, and laughter filling the air. Amani sat next to King Jabari, her heart full of joy and pride. She had never imagined that she would be celebrated as a hero. As the night went on, Amani's friend, a clever boy named Kofi, approached her. "Amani, that was amazing. You were so brave," he said, his eyes wide with admiration. "Thank you, Kofi," Amani replied, smiling. "But I couldn't have done it without everyone's help." Kofi nodded, then leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "There's something I need to show you. It's about Nzuri's cave. I think there's more to it than we saw." Amani's curiosity was piqued. "What do you mean?" she asked. Kofi glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "I went back to the cave after the battle. There's a hidden passage that we didn't notice before. I think it might lead to something important." Amani's eyes widened. "We should check it out," she said, feeling a sense of adventure rising within her. "But we need to be careful. Nzuri may be defeated, but we don't know what else might be in that cave." The next morning, just as the sun began to rise, Amani and Kofi quietly left the village and made their way back to Nzuri's cave. They slipped through the forest, their footsteps light and careful. When they reached the cave, Kofi led Amani to the hidden passage he had discovered. It was a narrow, dark tunnel that seemed to go on forever. Amani took a deep breath and held up a small lantern they had brought with them. "Stay close," she whispered to Kofi, and together they entered the passage. The tunnel twisted and turned, descending deeper into the earth. After what felt like hours, they finally emerged into a large, hidden chamber. In the center of the chamber was a stone pedestal, and on it rested a dusty, ancient book. Amani approached the book cautiously. "This must be Nzuri's spellbook," she said, reaching out to touch it. "Maybe it can tell us more about his dark magic." Kofi nodded. "Be careful, Amani. There might be traps or curses." Amani carefully opened the book, and to her surprise, it was filled with strange symbols and drawings. She couldn't understand the writing, but she could sense the power emanating from the pages. Just then, a faint whisper echoed through the chamber. Amani and Kofi looked around, their hearts pounding. From the shadows, a ghostly figure appeared. It was Nzuri, or at least what was left of him, a mere shadow of his former self. "You dare enter my chamber?" the ghostly Nzuri hissed. "You may have destroyed my crystal, but you will never unlock the secrets of my magic." Amani held up the lantern, its light casting away some of the shadows. "We are not afraid of you, Nzuri. Your time of terror is over." Nzuri's ghostly form flickered. "You think you have won, but there are powers greater than you can imagine. The darkness will rise again, and you will face challenges far beyond this." With that, the ghostly figure vanished, leaving Amani and Kofi alone in the chamber. Amani closed the spellbook and looked at Kofi. "We need to take this back to the village. Mama Moyo and the elders might be able to decipher it." Kofi agreed, and they carefully carried the ancient book back through the tunnel and out of the cave. The journey back to Kijiji felt quicker, and soon they were back in the village, where they presented the book to Mama Moyo and the elders. As the elders began to study the book, Amani and Kofi realized that their adventure was far from over. They had stopped Nzuri, but his warning echoed in their minds. There were still secrets to uncover and challenges to face, but Amani knew that with her friends by her side, and the courage in her heart, she could face whatever came next. And so, with a new adventure on the horizon, Amani and Kofi prepared for whatever the future might hold. The elders of Kijiji, led by the wise Mama Moyo, carefully studied Nzuri's ancient spellbook. Days turned into weeks as they deciphered the strange symbols and drawings. Meanwhile, Amani and Kofi helped around the village, but they couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. One evening, as the sun set over the village, Mama Moyo called a meeting. The villagers gathered around the central fire, their faces filled with curiosity and concern. Mama Moyo held the spellbook in her hands, her expression serious. "We have learned much from Nzuri's spellbook," she began. "It contains powerful magic, but it also reveals the existence of an even darker force, the Shadow King. Nzuri was merely a servant to this greater evil." The villagers gasped. Amani and Kofi exchanged worried glances. "What does this mean for us?" Amani asked, her voice steady but filled with concern. Mama Moyo continued, "The Shadow King is a being of immense power, dwelling in a hidden realm. If he awakens, he could bring destruction far worse than Nzuri ever could. But there is hope. The spellbook also describes a way to defeat him, the Light of Unity, a powerful force created by the combined courage and unity of our people." King Jabari stepped forward, his voice strong and resolute. "We must prepare ourselves. We will need every villager to stand together, to be brave and strong. Amani, you have shown us what true bravery is. Will you lead us once more?" Amani felt a surge of determination. "I will, Your Majesty. We will face this threat together, and we will overcome it." Over the next few days, the village of Kijiji prepared for the impending battle. The warriors trained, the elders crafted protective charms, and everyone worked to strengthen their bonds of friendship and trust. The light of unity depended on their togetherness and courage. Finally, the day came. As the first rays of dawn touched the village, a dark cloud appeared on the horizon. The Shadow King's realm was approaching. The villagers gathered at the edge of the forest, their hearts filled with both fear and determination. Amani stood at the front, holding the stone of truth, which now shone even brighter with the added power of unity. King Jabari and Kofi stood beside her, along with Rafiki and the other villagers. The air grew cold, and the ground trembled as the Shadow King emerged from the darkness. He was a towering figure, wreathed in shadows, with eyes that glowed like burning coals. His voice was deep and menacing as he spoke. "You dare challenge me, insignificant mortals?" Amani stepped forward, her voice clear and unwavering. "We are not afraid of you, Shadow King. We stand together, united by our courage and friendship. You cannot defeat us." The Shadow King laughed, a sound that chilled their bones. "We shall see," he said, raising his hands to unleash his dark magic. But before he could attack, Amani held up the stone of truth. It blazed with light, and the villagers joined hands, their hearts and spirits united. The light of unity grew stronger, surrounding them with a radiant glow. The Shadow King roared in anger and frustration as the light grew brighter and brighter, pushing back the darkness. With a final, powerful burst of energy, the light of unity overwhelmed the Shadow King, shattering his dark form and banishing him back to his hidden realm. The darkness lifted, and the sun shone brightly over Kijiji once more. The villagers cheered and embraced, their joy and relief palpable. They had faced the greatest threat together and emerged victorious. King Jabari smiled at Amani, his eyes filled with pride. "You have saved us once again, Amani. Your bravery and leadership have shown us the true power of unity." Amani smiled back, her heart filled with happiness. "We did it together," she said. "As long as we stand together, we can overcome any challenge." The village of Kijiji celebrated their victory with another grand feast, filled with music, dancing, and laughter. Amani, Kofi, and their friends knew that they would always be ready to face whatever adventures and challenges lay ahead, united by their courage and friendship. And so, peace and happiness returned to Kijiji, where the story of Amani and her bravery would be told for generations to come, inspiring all who heard it to believe in the power of unity and the strength of a courageous heart.